All right. Thank you very much for joining me, Michelle. Um, could you start by giving me an introduction to yourself and your role at the Women's Chapter?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me, Chris. My name is Michelle Pugh-Parry de Klerk. I'm the founder of the Women's Chapter. It is a movement and membership community for impact-driven women in business, both professionals and entrepreneurs. We are celebrating our 10th year, so we have grown very organically over the years, something we're very, very proud of. And a couple of years ago, we became the first women's network or community in the UK to become B Corp certified, which for a small business was a really great achievement for us. Um, and also, over the last 10 years, we've reached more than 25,000 women through our curated events, thought leadership, and pro bono work.
Wow. Sounds very impressive indeed. How did you find the B Corp process?
It when I first started, I actually found it really inspiring, and I had to reel myself in because it got me so excited about all of the things that we could be doing. So I'd started doing it as sort of through an accelerator program and trying to do it myself. And then I realized that it would just never happen because I would keep trying to introduce new things and get super excited. So I worked with an amazing consultancy who are actually women's chapter members called Sid Connects. And I said to them, can you please help me? So with them, the process was actually brilliant. And they provided a lot of kind of structure for, what we were, recognition for what we were already doing, but then also allowing me to be inspired and excited about all the things we could go on to do. So all in all, it wasn't as terrifying a process as I think some people think it is. And I've become very much an advocate for small businesses. Even if they don't land up becoming certified, at least embracing the framework, using it to kind of see how well they're doing in terms of driving impact and then what else they could be doing. So I think it's a really interesting tool, even if you don't land up becoming certified. How about you? What did you think?
We started right at the beginning,
Okay.
when it first launched in the UK, and we were like, this is great. This is exactly the kind of initiative that we need to be a part of because we're trying to build a purpose-driven identity platform, and
Yeah.
it kind of ticked all the boxes for us in terms of the type of thing we should be doing. So we signed up for it before we were really live as a kind of going concern, if you like.
Yeah.
Um, and it was hard, but to your point, I think just really energizing. It kind of really made you feel like you were doing something purposeful. It reminded you of all of the important things that you'd set up in order to make the organization kind of go in the direction you wanted it to go. So, on the subject of trust,
Mhm.
I think for me, trust is key to any brand, right? You can't have a brand if you don't have trust. But why is trust important to the women's chapter? What do you think are the kind of the key reasons why it's important that yeah people trust the brand?
I think it's primarily because we are a community. And so our approach is always the human first approach. I think it's really difficult to build a community and to make people feel included, supported, heard, seen if you don't have that human first approach. I think it's about considering every single person that's part of a community. Um, and our trust has evolved from that. I think that focus on thinking of them as individuals rather than a collective. And yes, we function incredibly well as a collective, and that's the whole point, that we can drive more impact, more change together. But we can't forget that every single person has their own journey as part of that. Um, so yeah, I think for us the trust piece is so important. We wouldn't exist if we didn't have that.
And, and if there were sort of three things that you thought really helped the women's chapter build trust, what would they be? Sort of three core things. Obviously, you've got the human touch, but what what would what would you say were the top three things?
Respect. It's really important that, people do feel seen, heard, respected. And I think respect goes all the way through from that, the human interaction, that human first piece, but all the way through to our processes, how we deal with their data, their experience on, both in person and on our platform. So it's really important to us that people feel respected from their first engagement with us all the way through to onboarding, becoming a member, and then obviously taking part of in the community. And then the other two things that are really important, I think, are consistency and reliability. One of the reasons I believe that we have been around for as long as we have, and we've built the kind of community that we have, is because we are consistent. You have to walk the talk. And, that flows through obviously to sustainability and impact and all of those things. But people very quickly realize if you're not consistent, if you're not delivering what you say you will, then you're just another kind of fly by night. Or how can they trust you to feel comfortable, to let their hair down, to be vulnerable, to share what they need or how they need to be supported, or to make really genuine connections if there isn't that level of consistency and reliability? So I think those would be my three: respect, consistency, and reliability.
Yeah, they sound pretty much spot on for any brand in many ways, but I really like the way you sort of relate them there to the women's chapter. I think for me, consistency, it should touch every element of the brand as well to help build your trust. It's how you present yourself as well. If one day you present yourself in blue and the next day you're in orange, and just that visual identity as well, I think it's really important for everybody in the business to understand the importance of consistency. And I don't know if you experience this, but there's certainly some people that perhaps see less value in it than others. Like, oh, it doesn't matter if I use a different font or a different tone of voice or a different image. Yeah.
But I think that even goes to how you communicate with people. So it's been really important for us. I was a journalist back in kind of one of my previous careers. That tone of voice and the way that you communicate with people, from every email, every WhatsApp in a community group, that you are consistent, that you are using language that really aligns with your values and your vision, because that's how you bring people along with you, but also that through every touch point, they are feeling respected and considered. And for us, that's really important. And I think it's something we might not even have realized that we did it in the beginning, but it's now from it, across our team, all of our comms, everything. It's, if there's even just a mistake in the copy, that detracts from the experience that a person has when they're reading it. Send an email to someone and make an effort that you spell their name correctly, that the salutations are considered, that you include information in there that makes them feel like you know who they are. It's not always easy, obviously, when a community is big, but as far as possible, we try to do that. And I think that kind of, for me, ticks all of those boxes. And it's from the tiny little things all the way to the way that we deliver on a much bigger level.
So I don't think I've ever met a CEO that doesn't love a metric. So I appreciate that trust is a really hard thing to measure, but do you have any metrics in place at the women's chapter that help you understand how you're doing in terms of building trust? The things that you're doing that are impacting that metric, or
Yes.
anything you think would help?
So ours tends to be more qualitative, but we do regular surveys, outreach to our community. In fact, every time we run an event, whether that be virtual or in person, we always ask for feedback. We ask them, if it served their needs, because I think a very big part of what we do is making sure that, the benefits, the experiences, everything is fit for purpose. Otherwise, there's no point. People need to feel like they have that what they need is being met. So so yes, we do a lot of qualitative surveys, which are sometimes really scary, right? It's hard to ask people what you could be doing better. But we have got better at that. I've built a thicker skin over the years. But it was also actually something that is part of our B Corp certification process. We put kind of more of a metric in place, in that, you know, how often they needed to be done, what questions we were asking, because I think a lot of the time in the beginning, in the early days, we were asking questions that, you know, we wanted the answers to, but we weren't asking the difficult questions. So a big part of that metric, I think, is to ask the difficult questions, to be vulnerable and open to feedback. And very fortunately, our feedback is incredible, and all of the women within our community, you know, say that they will readily recommend us to others. But then we also do separate questionnaires and feedback around what their specific needs are, so that we can keep evaluating our processes, our benefits, and our services to meet their needs. Because I think something that we might have set out to do 8 years ago isn't necessarily what people still need now. So it's really important to keep asking those questions. And so we do that on a very regular basis, and log all of that. And the team then go through and read all of the feedback, to understand, okay, you know, if we're doing this, is this actually what people want? We've just been doing that at the moment. Actually, we have a feature on our website and as part of our membership benefits, which we suspected people weren't embracing as much as we thought they would. So as part of this last round of feedback, we asked the question, and it's been really interesting to see. So, you know, now we know moving forward, we can make some tweaks. So I think one of the benefits, I guess, of being a small agile business is that you can do that. You can keep evolving your processes in response to whatever you have in place to make sure that you're doing a good job.
Um, so sometimes things don't go the way that we hope they might, and we make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Have you faced any issues at the women's chapter which have kind of tested your customers' trust a bit? You know, maybe an inconsistent thing that went out, or something which a member of the team misjudged, and you know, something which, yeah, perhaps eroded that customer trust. And how did you manage to handle that?
Um, so it was an email breach, which I think probably everybody has experienced at some point. We don't anymore because we have a lot more processes in place now and security measures. But it was many years ago, probably about 8 years ago. And I was actually on holiday, and fortunately I had my laptop. I was on my first holiday with my new partner, so it was our kind of first trip together, and I was trying not to be a workaholic. But I had taken my laptop with me, and I started on my phone. I saw these emails coming through, and people saying, "Was this meant for me?" Or, and I thought, "Oh God, what has happened?" And yeah, basically, the whole last day of the holiday, I spent replying personally to everybody and letting them know. And obviously, I had to alert the team. But then we invested in some much better security measures, and we constantly evaluate that, because it was such, I know what it's like when you receive something like that and you're like, oh, have their emails been hacked, you know, and that's it is a huge erosion of trust, because people then are questioning, well, if their emails got hacked, like, what are they doing with the rest of my data?
Yeah, they assume
um
that everything else has been hacked, which of
exactly,
course it wouldn't
exactly.
have been. But it's, yeah, it's
Yeah.
that trust.
And so yeah, so that was a really challenging team, and our team wasn't very big then. So it was very much something that fell on me. And actually, very fortunately, my partner, the two of us, between the two of us, we sat and kind of, he helped me to, you know, respond to things and work out who we needed to reach out to. But yeah, I since then have not made the mistake of cutting corners on anything like that. Well, to be honest, it was a learning curve, because I didn't even realize that what we had in place wasn't enough.
I mean, I don't think anybody can possibly
Yeah.
foresee how they're going to get, you know,
Mm.
breached or attacked. And unfortunately, some businesses are targeted more than others as well. It's sad to say.
Yeah.
And
And I
so,
think,
yeah,
yeah. No, I mean, all of these things, unfortunately, that's been the only thing that's happened. But it is a huge consideration because we are a community and, we do have a platform where we have people's profiles. Um, and I think these days there are a lot more, just like your platform in place, that can help people make sure that they're doing right by their customer base and providing those extra layers of trust, which is really important. But at that time, and I'm not particularly tech savvy, it was a really frightening thing to happen.
I can imagine. And it sounds like you've done all the things that you need to do to sort of rectify that particular issue.
Yeah.
Do you think there was anything behaviourally that you did as an organisation off the back of that differently? So obviously you put in place additional security measures, but did it make you think differently about your processes or anything, perhaps?
Yes, I think it was to really take what we do, not that we didn't take it seriously, but to take it seriously and invest in it. Um, and interestingly, since we have invested more in our processes and our customer experience and making sure that feeling that we want people to have of being considered and that everything that we do is curated, since we have been investing in that over the years, our community's really grown, and the majority of our members come to us by referral, so by word of mouth. And we've been really fortunate that we haven't had to do any paid advertising or marketing out, everybody kind of, and I think that's testament to that trust and brand loyalty that we have built. But definitely you need to keep assessing and investing in your processes and your efficiencies and making sure that everything you do goes back to how you want people to feel.
Yeah, that kind of brings me on neatly to my next kind of question that I'd written down, which was,
Mm.
how do you think that the trust has evolved over the years? And you mentioned a driver there that's helped it develop. Is there, yeah, what do you say were the other key kind of significant drivers that are really helping you build that trust, that really super important trust in the women's chapter?
I think it's about creating a really safe space. And I know, I mean, a safe space is open to really broad interpretation, right? But in the context of building connections and relationships with people, because the relationships that our members build with each other they start out as relationships. We do not do transactional networking. So it's relationships first. And I think we very much seen our role as creating inclusive, safe, trustworthy spaces for that to happen in. And so I think that evolution has come from people experiencing that, sharing the word, saying, because there are lots of people out there who've had really bad experiences with networking. And we try to, it's been one of our biggest missions all the way along, is to redefine what it means to network. Essentially, it's to build meaningful relationships with people that, can go on to create really magical things. But you need to start with that open heart, open mind, reciprocal mindset for a really good relationship. And so over time, we've got better and better, I think, at providing those curated spaces and facilitating those kinds of connections. Yeah, I don't know if you agree, but lots of people, I think, bash talking or conversation and that nothing really comes from it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we see this, we saw it over International Women's Day. There are always people on LinkedIn that are talking about, oh, well, it's just echo chambers and conversation, but never really leads to anything. And I really disagree. I think right conversations with the right people can lead to really meaningful connection, which leads to collaboration, which leads to change.
Actually, people saying things like, "Oh, it's just an echo chamber." Do you know what? Sometimes an echo chamber is actually quite useful.
Sometimes an echo chamber is a safe space.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think it's really important for whatever community means for us, or a place that we find that we can share how we feel, be vulnerable, ask for help, connect with others. that should not be underestimated, the power of that, because
Yeah.
it leads to really great connections. And when you come together with people that you are making great connections with, that's where change happens. Because it's
Yeah,
very
and
rare that we can do it on our own.
absolutely. And I think increasingly it feels to me, and I'm sounding like an old duffer here, but increasingly there aren't as many opportunities for that kind of human
Mm,
conversation. Yeah, you can have great conversations online. We're having one now,
yeah,
but it's not um, it's not the norm, right? Whereas I guess pre-hybrid working, you were having conversations every day that you maybe wouldn't have had.
yeah,
And I think you need to try and find, and I think we all do it. Hopefully, you need to try and find those opportunities to have actual conversations aren't that don't have a purpose. Perhaps it's just about having a conversation.
yeah,
And yeah, maybe it's an echo chamber, but perhaps that's what helps you formulate your idea. And if you can bring people in that perhaps don't agree with you, then that's even better. Um,
yeah.
but if you're not having any conversations and you're just sat there on your own, then yeah, nothing's going to
Mm,
evolve.
mm.
Um, are there any companies or industries in particular or organizations that you look to that help the women's chapter kind of build your brand, build your trust? Do you think, yeah, I like the way they're doing that, and maybe that's something that we should be doing a bit more of?
There's so many. I mean, I'm very fortunate that within the women's chapter, we have a lot of women-led businesses. So we have, female founders and equally professionals who are driving businesses on behalf of others. But so just even within our community, there's some amazing product-based brands that I love and I support them. Ancient and Brave is one of them. They've done an incredible job at building a really cohesive community. And again, their products have their whole product range is very much evolved based on what their community is asking for. But then their brand, their messaging, everything just really speaks to me as an individual, as it does to the many tens of thousands of customers that they have. But I think for me, I'm always inspired by these brands that manage to find the balance, because as we know, as B Corp certified brands, that we really embrace the idea that you can do good and you can make money, and that actually you need to make money in order to really do good. So brands like that. Another one that I love, and again, it's a product based business, but it's a community, is a footwear brand called Erin Grace. Um, and the founder is a great friend, but I bought many pairs of her shoes long before I knew her. And just everything that they did, from the emails they sent out to how they showed up on social platforms, everything just spoke to me, and I felt really proud to be one of their customers, and would tell anybody at any opportunity I got how amazing their shoes are and how comfortable they are. And so I think um there's so many of them that I think, for me, the common thread is always the community piece. And we saw this over the pandemic, right? The brands that survived, both service and product based businesses, were the ones that got out there and spoke to their customers and engaged their communities and asked how they could help them and what they could be doing better. And over that time, and we're really vulnerable. Whereas the ones that kind of curled in on themselves, a lot of them aren't around. And I think it was a very stark reminder for all of us how we don't exist without our customers and our communities. Um, so we need to stop hiding away and actually really talk to them and include them in our journey and evolve our products and services to keep serving their need, not giving them what we think they should have, but giving them what they really need and what they're asking for.
Thinking about the future of trust,
Mhm.
and focusing in on the end user for a moment, are you exploring any kind of new strategies or technologies that you think might help enhance that consumer trust?
Yes. In fact, we are currently looking at a complete overhaul of our system in terms of automation, to make sure that again, as our community grows, that we can be really consistent with how we communicate, that it is spaced out, that people, they come to expect how you communicate with them and when you communicate with them, rather than it being really ad hoc. So we're actually looking at, from a sort of back end and processes perspective, all of those. And trust and security is a really big part of that, obviously, because as we spoke about earlier, you do need to keep evaluating that. Criminals get more and more sophisticated, and particularly online with data, etc. So we have a responsibility as business owners to keep looking at those systems and how future-proof we are.
Yeah. And do you think there's any kind of trends that you've seen emerging on the sort of futuristic stuff that you're seeing other people doing, which you think will help shape consumer trust?
I think people want to know that they are safe in their interactions with you. But I think some of the current systems, with all the multiple steps of verification, etc., can sometimes not be very time efficient, or they can make people feel frustrated. So I would like to see systems that give people that level of security, but where we don't have to jump through a gazillion hoops to get it.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's I don't know how much you know about it. That's very much our bread and butter.
yeah, exactly.
Not really the purpose of this podcast, but
Mm,
yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that there is a fundamental challenge coming down the road, in that I think increasingly people are just going to be expected to prove who they are. Like, it's going to become less of a request and more of a, you're starting a new conversation with someone. You need to evidence that you are a legitimate human, and you're not a deep fake or anything like that. And I think it needs to be frictionless. It needs to be trustworthy. It needs to be easy to do, and it needs to be robust. Um, we've been working for years on trying to build up this network of verified identities, and we try and make it as easy as possible. But the bottom line is, you do need to go through some hoops in order to check someone's a real person.
mm,
We've kind of got it to a point now where we can look at a photo, not a photo, look at a live video image, if you like, and determine if that person's real, which is great. And then we can match it to a document and know they're real. But moving forward, we want that to be portable, so that people can then use that anytime. So that's
yeah.
the way our systems work, is that anyone would do it. Maybe at the end of the call, I'll tell you a little bit more, but maybe there's something we can do to help. But yeah, I absolutely agree. It needs to be super easy. But sometimes, and there's one of my colleagues talks about this a lot, is there's something called positive friction, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the time people think about friction as being an issue, but sometimes you kind of want there to be a few steps, because otherwise you think, well, I don't know, like the first time I used Apple Pay for a large transaction in a shop,
Mhm.
I felt a bit weird about it. In fact,
Yeah.
it wasn't in a shop; it was at the dentist, and it was 800 quid. It's a lot of money,
Yeah.
and and I'd forgotten my card, and they were like, "Oh, have you got Apple Pay?" I was like, "Yeah." Like, you can do it with that. I was like, "Are you sure?" And then
Yeah.
£800 was just gone like that from my bank account, and it felt a bit. And now I feel fine with it, but initially I might have preferred a few more checks and balances.
Mm,
But I think there's something kind of interesting there.
yeah.
So
No, and I think the identity verification piece, people are already, used to that. I mean, it's remarkable these days. You can set up a bank account and you can scan your face, and you do it all on your phone. And literally, within a couple of hours, you get a notification to say, yeah, your account's live, and here's your virtual bank card, and all of these things. And I did that a couple of years ago, and I moved business banking. And compared to the experience I'd had previously, where everything's still done by post, or, it was unbelievable that I could literally move my entire business banking over to an app on my phone, and it was live within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And for me, that process, it wasn't frustrating at all. It was like I was super impressed. I was like, wow, but it is scary. Um, and I think, now with advancements with AI, and we see it across social media all the time, fake news, all this kind of thing, it's terrifying, and if you are the custodian of people's data and you have processes and systems, we are the ones that need to be working with people like you to make sure that we're investing in systems that keep our communities and our customers safe, and give them that peace of mind, because that really feeds into, their whole customer experience, but also how much they trust you and how much brand loyalty they have. Mm.
I think one of the things that we set out to do as a business is ultimately we kind of exist to help businesses build trust. I
Mm.
don't think we can say we build the trust. Our products help the businesses build the trust. So
Mm.
we work with social media platforms to verify people's ages so that people can trust that they're the right age, or
Yeah.
banks that need to trust that they're the right people buying the
Yeah.
products.
Well, and as we know with social media platforms and age verification now, I mean, it's hard to believe that there are platforms that don't have that,
Yeah,
that we have left ourselves so exposed,
yeah,
and particularly when it comes to younger people. And if you think about all the information that we put on social media platforms, um, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day because I realized actually on one of my social platforms that I have albums of photographs, you know,
right,
and that they need to come off. They need to, because essentially I'm trusting this platform with really special memories and information, which now, if somebody got hold of that or whatever, it can be changed, altered. What, you have no control. So I think definitely, the work that you do is so valuable to give people like me, from a business perspective, the tools to help
yeah,
our customers trust us more and to
exactly.
take trust to a new level. But ultimately, these are things that we all need to be doing
Yeah,
regardless, as individuals and business owners.
yeah, 100%.
Mm.
Um, I guess kind of last question. Is there any advice that you'd give to other companies or other organizations, networks, communities that I guess are trying to launch? Because very few communities get to be communities unless they've got trust, right? So, um, how do you think they should go about it? So, if I was a new community wanting to launch, what would I need to do to really build that trust?
I think it would be consideration around how future proof you are, and to do that from the beginning rather than try and do things retrospectively or in response to a crisis or something that goes wrong. Um, it's something that we see a lot, not only within our community, but in the sort of broader networks that I'm part of, both for business owners and founders, that a lot of the time, we're trying to claw back when something goes wrong. But actually, if we start out by crossing T's and dotting I's and taking a really proactive approach to what we know is coming in the future, what already exists, but what's coming, you can save yourself a lot of time and money. And you can also set out that kind of trust basis from the very beginning, because you can talk about all of those things that you've got in place and you can assure your customers. So yeah, and then I think the other piece for me is, the other advice is to, from an impact perspective, don't ever underestimate the power that you have as a business to drive impact, regardless of your shape, size. I think it goes back to that piece of, a lot of people put their hands up and goes, oh, well, I'm just one person, or I'm just a small business. There's nothing I can do. And I don't subscribe to that. We all need to take responsibility, and particularly as business owners, if you're starting out a business now, build all those layers of impact and safety and security into your business from the very beginning, and you will create a really solid foundation for growth.
Thank you, Michelle. I think this has been a really interesting chat. Um, I've learned some new
Thank
stuff,
you.
and I
So
think
have
the
I.
conversation triggered a few things, so which is fantastic.